Hi, everybody. This is David Cohen. We are back traveling in summer, actually across the year, but traveling throughout Europe in summer is really a hassle. Airlines delay their flights, they are late, others come even later, you miss connecting flights, everything. Then you arrive at hotels too late, etc., etc. So, unfortunately, we were unable to do anything last week. The obvious topic today would be and is Sony's latest release, the Sony RX1R Mark III. And I'm going to talk about this camera because of the role I assigned myself when I started this channel, to look through the nonsense, the bullshit, the typical influencer nonsense. But I want to connect it with one of the most awesome, beautiful clips, productions, YouTube channel contributions I've seen in all my life. Those of you who follow me, who at least watch my clips now and then, will certainly have realized and noticed how much I appreciate and admire Hugh Brownstone from Three Blind Men and an Elephant. And the clip I'm talking about today, in connection with Sony's latest release, you will find the link underneath, is about his take on photography in connection and in context with his own family history, his connection with and to Leica, even though he's not an ambassador, and how his whole family and personal situation has been shaped also by the fact that his family had to leave Germany because they are Jewish. I didn't know about this, but somehow it is the story of my life that most of the people, creators, actors, etc., you name it, I really like, are Jewish. It's really strange. Now, before you actually continue with my clip, I would even say switch over to Hugh Brownstone's clip that, as I said, is linked underneath, in order to understand what I'm going to talk about in the rest of my clip of today. As a matter of fact, Hugh Brownstone, I mentioned it, is not a Leica ambassador. Even though he would have deserved to be a Leica ambassador, he also works with other cameras. And maybe that is the reason, I don't know. On the other hand, he was even invited to, not only to participate, he was invited with his wife, Claudia, to the festivities in Wetzlar. And he was obviously also invited and selected to talk about Leica, about his take on all of this. As you may remember, my personal life as a photographer started before primary school, elementary school. My father owned a Leica, several Leicas actually, and I started with his M3, a beautiful camera, which I have to admit made me fall for Fujifilm's X100 series, which was impossible for me to work with until Mark VI brought IBIS. I was a child and I shared my father's enthusiasm and interest for archaeology, for history. And in summer, in the heat, at midday, in Sicily, in Greece, wherever, today I cannot even believe what I did, because I hate summer, I hate the heat, I hate the sun, and therefore I stay as much as possible inside, up to the point where my GP asked me if I was a vampire because of my deficit in vitamin D. So I have to supplement it. Returning to cameras. And because of my interest, he showed me, and I'm also the oldest son, which counts. But I showed interest, and he showed me gradually over the next years throughout elementary school up to secondary school, junior high, how to frame a shot, how to hold a camera to make it easy, to make it successful, everything. I cut a long story short, and afterwards I also worked with his Leica Flex, not the black model that came afterwards with the print on it, but the classic Leica Flex with the huge battery in front of the prism for the light metering, otherwise a mechanical camera. For a long time, I couldn't afford it. And I started professional photography. Or not only not afford it, but, you know, I had a different life. Photography was a very big thing in my life. And back then, Nikon's professional bodies were the only ones I could really afford, because I also back then started with a huge park of lenses and all of this. But I had Leicas, I had R4, I had R5. I continued with Nikon, etc., but Leica was always there. I bought several times a second-hand version of my father's Leica Flex with lenses. I parted with it again, which I regretted immediately every single time when I did it, but I was always like, when something is not really regularly used, you better part ways. I shouldn't have done this. In the digital era, I continued with Nikon before I switched to Sony, because back then, when I realized about mirrorless cameras, they were the only real alternative. Fujifilm, not really back then, IBIS, and apart from the X100 series, I still don't like the design. I'm sorry, but a camera is not only a tool. It is something I work with. It is something that needs to be beautiful. It is something that needs to inspire me, where I have fun, where I enjoy taking it into my hand. So in this time, I owned two Leica bridge cameras, the Velux series, and eventually Leica Deluxe 7, Leica Deluxe 8. And now many of you, even though I was talking about it, may ask, so why never M? Yeah, I could have afforded them, but the big problem is no IBIS, no autofocus. As a professional portrait boudoir photographer, impossible to work under these circumstances. Leica Q made it possible. And eventually, earlier this year, I finally got hold of a Leica Q343. So here is quite some similarity, family background. But what I really want, why I'm talking about this is, and you talked about it, and I realized this is exactly how I feel. When you take, I have shot with Nikons for a big part of my life. I have spent many years with Sony, but over and over again, I returned to Leica because even when you work with the VLux and Deluxe series, you feel the history. You feel that these cameras are different. When I decided to slim down and give away my Canons, which I really liked, it was the first and absolutely the last time I will own a Canon. Awesome camera, awesome color science. But every time I flirted with a Leica camera, the Leica Q, handmade in Germany, the tradition, the history, this is not some ballast. This is something, and you feel it, you see it when you enter a store, a gallery, when you dealing with Leica service. You see that this tradition and the history is not a dead body that they have to carry around because there's nothing else. It is an obligation. And this is what I'm talking about. Leica cameras inspire a lot. I loved my Nikons, really. I was for many years, for many decades, I was a Nikon, enthusiastic Nikon user. But the moment I open the case and take my Leica out, also the Deluxe 7 and even more so the Deluxe 8, it is a different thing. And it's not only that Ernst Leitz saved Jews, which is an admirable thing. He became, in his own right, not another Schindler, because that would diminish his role, but he put himself in a row and in the company of Germans, many Germans in the end, who significantly helped Jews putting their lives on the line. But it is this drive for excellence, the industrial design. It is something that you hold in your hands that others, that hasn't been assembled on an assembly line. Yes, the Deluxe 8, yes, but still with stringent Leica quality control. It is the same people who watch over the design, and you clearly see the design, especially now, but also the quality process, everything that is responsible, that are responsible for cameras like the M, the SL, and the Q. Photography, and I really thought I hear myself talk. As Hugh says, photography is a passion. It is a way of living. Ever since I owned my first camera, and it was my first own camera, a Kodak Instamatic. It was a camera, of course, even back then I knew it is not comparable to my father's Leica M3, but it wasn't meant to be, it shouldn't be, but it was my camera. I took it with me. Everywhere we went, I took it with me. With my pocket money, I bought the film rolls because my parents were quite strict with money. My father earned, he was a physician, He was a gynecologist, an eminent gynecologist. He earned a lot of money, but they were very, very strict and rigid when it came to money with my brother and me. So I got pocket money, but I really had to think twice if I'm buying ice cream, additional ice cream, apart from my parents' allocations, or if I buy a film roll. How long do I have to save up to be able to send the film roll for development? How many photos did I really keep? You paid, in the beginning, you paid for everything, and then you only paid for what you kept. And what I learned from the very beginning is, and that helped me a lot, meticulously I would write down for every exposure, for every slide, which time of the day, the light, where I was standing, how I was standing, how the light came in, aperture, shutter speed, and the characteristic of the film roll. Now you can imagine within 2-3 years, I had lots of these tiny notebooks full of these notes, and I went through them because I would put a system in place where I was able to return to my photos and say, this is ABC and these are the details. Photography is, as I said, not only a passion, which is already a lot, it is a way of living, it is a way of seeing things. And this is why I appreciate Leica Deluxe 8 so much. I have it with me all the time. Always in Kinshasa during the riots, I was thinking about, how about taking a photo here? How about this? When I lived in Israel, when I left for work, as much as I was able and allowed to take my camera with me, how can I make a photo here? Is this a photo? And even if I took a photo, until today, I'm very careful and strict with what passes as a photo. And even then, you may never see it. Leica is an awesome company. Just look at the way they treat their employees. When I bought Leica Q3 43, it came with this gray lettering. I hated it. I understand and I understood that they wanted this camera to stand, even though it was the same series, the Q3 series, but that it was visibly distinct from Leica Q3 28, the original. But I didn't like, and I still don't like, the gray leathering, and I decided to take it off, to have it taken off and replaced with black, because I love black. Nevertheless, as Hugh Brownstone, I have worked with other cameras. He has been way more consistent because of his use of Leica M cameras. But, and now we come, that's the bridge to Sony RX1R Mark III. If I was into the same state of mind I was before I fell ill, I would have bought it, just for the fact that it is a camera that I was always interested in. It is a camera that is where you see that even a company like Sony that caters to nearly everybody has a camera full of character. This camera has never been a mass product. This camera has always been in its own right, and it continues this tradition. And therefore, I'm already amused to see all the bullshit and nonsense of people saying, but it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it doesn't have this, and it is too expensive. Now, when you go back to 10 years ago, the predecessor model was launched. Now, do the simple thing, because I don't expect these people to think, because they don't think, otherwise they wouldn't come up with that nonsense. They even had a fight with one of those influencers whose only argument was that because I confronted him with facts, and he said, yeah, and I said, obviously you have no idea, you have no clue. He said, yeah, and you obviously have no hair. What an intelligent answer. Therefore, no matter who he is, what he is, in my world, in my book, a life form, and certainly not a human being. Why? Because he didn't behave like a human being. Just to look like, resemble a human being, doesn't make you a human being. Anyway, so Google, how much money, considering 10 years, what has happened in between? We had 10 years ago, we were still reeling under the economic crisis of 2008 and 9. We had COVID. We had inflation. We had unprecedented increases and hikes of natural resources like gas and petrol, so crude oil, not only because of the war in Ukraine, which also happened, but also because this time has come to an end. Far too slow, we realize that burning fossil fuel is a dead-end road. Truth be told, I don't care anymore. We don't have kids. It will be not as bad for me. I'm 61. I'm feeling very sorry for Yasmina. But even then, first of all, she will always be able to go somewhere where it is pleasant, not only because she has the money, which we earn very hard, but because we are flexible in our minds. And we can work from nearly anywhere if we have to. But we don't need to worry about kids. We don't need to worry about our answer if one day these kids turn 15, 18, 20, 25, realizing that their lives are, I say it, shit, because of the generations before. I don't care. I care for Yasmin and I care for the animals. The rest has to take care of themselves. Nevertheless, Google it, and you will see that this price back then in today's money is very, very close to the price Sony demands. Yes, it doesn't have a tilted screen. You know why? Read it. Why don't you? You know, that was my test. A lot of people, and many of you who listen to me, automatically, as a reaction, instinctively, will say, yeah, 5.1K is way too expensive. Why? Why don't you see, why don't you find out for yourself? What are the differences? What are the trade-offs? Which trade-offs have been made to achieve what? There is a good reason why the screen is not tilted. My Leica Deluxe 8 doesn't have it. And I don't care. When I started photography, and for the better part of my life, we didn't have tilting screens. And still, photography thrived. It is not only the niche, as I used to say. It is, what do I get for the money I pay? What am I willing to pay? What do I want? What do I need? What do I want for what I need? And as always in life, there are trade-offs. And this camera is offering a lot of things. Very soon, I hope, and it looks good, I will be able to have a look, personally, to have a look at one of these cameras. Thanks to my friends at Digital Store Vienna, I will also soon have the possibility, I just need to find the time, to have Fujifilm GFX 100 RF, and I will be able to compare, because it doesn't offer IBIS, how good it is outdoors. And I will even try, even though the lens is not really for the kind of work I do, I will also put it to the test for me. I think I'm quite confident that I already know today what these results, indoor results, will be. But nevertheless, I will try. But coming back, and this is now another, how can I say, controversial camera. Don't expect everything from everything. You cannot buy an SUV and have the sleek design of a Ferrari. You cannot buy a Ferrari and have the off-road capabilities or the possibilities of getting a family's luggage for a 2-week road trip in a Ferrari. Do you need to buy another car? And that's the same. I'm very happy that Sony released this camera. It's a beautiful camera. Design has also improved. The lens, people will say, yeah, but the lens. Yeah, but the lens. That's what I hear. I have to mock these people because it brings me fun when I have to read such bullshit and nonsense. The lens is stellar. It was stellar 10 years ago, and obviously it is still good enough. Because for everything else, the price would have been higher. And then, yes, we are at Leica or Hasselblad levels. Then the same or the other life forms say, yeah, but Leica is so expensive. Yeah. As if you had the right to own a Leica. As if Leica or Hasselblad or Sony owed you. And then all of a sudden, all these uneducated ignorants who have no idea of business administration turn into experts, also in this field and area, and say, yeah, but at this price, they will never sell it. This camera was never a heavy seller, but it was so popular, still popular enough for so many people to wait for the successor. That should tell you something. And trust me, these people, these companies hire experts, pay enormous salaries for their expertise because they hold degrees, relevant degrees, and command years and decades of expertise and experience that you, influencers and commenters, simply do not have. Period. Therefore, when you don't know anything, don't comment. If you feel the urge to express yourself, there is a room in the flat where you can do it. It's called the toilet. That's where your place is. Yeah. So, I can't wait to see the comments. I can't wait for those who will bash me for loving Leica. And no, I'm not paid by Leica. I'm not a Leica ambassador. I will never be a Leica ambassador. It's not my goal to be a Leica ambassador. That whole ambassador thing is a totally different lane. If I had been interested, I would have had to live and work in a different way, but obviously I'm not interested. if they ever decide to do that, of course I wouldn't refuse. But you know what Charlie Chaplin once said? He said he is very suspicious of any organization or club or association willing to accept him as a member.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not suspicious of Leica, but that's why they don't take me. Nevertheless, I can't wait to hear and read and yeah, your answers, many of them, and I'm very grateful to and for these people who appreciate my frankness. You don't have to agree. I don't agree. Not everybody who supports me agrees with me. We have very good discussions. But I really, and that was the beginning of this channel, is to tell those life forms that they are life forms. And maybe reach, and sometimes I already had the feeling that some people said, I saw it the same way, you made me think differently. And if it had been only one in all that time, and for the rest of my life that I'm going to do this, that would have been enough already to make at least one see and understand and change the attitude. I wish you a nice Sunday.